I'm just waiting my camera to stop recording. Yeah, it happens quite often now. Like, it just switches from different modes of filming and setting, so it would get interrupted. Just the recording would get stopped automatically. I don't know if that makes sense. So I'm going to read books before I go into the gym. Yeah, we're working out legs later. I just went back and picked up my pants because I'm wearing jeans, so I can't do leg workout with jeans, right? Earlier today I read page 176, I believe. Yeah, yes, okay. I'm going to keep reading. That was probably on just the second page. Okay. Oh no, the third page, I believe. Just on page 178, I've gone through years of psychotherapy. A well-known neuroscientist told me to try to find out why I behave in certain ways. I think about my feelings, my motivations. I talk to my therapist about them. I finally come up with a story that seems to make sense, and it satisfies me. I need a story I can believe, but is it true? Probably not. The real truth lies in structures like my thalamus and hypothalamus and my amygdala, and I have no conscious access to those no matter how much I introspect. If we are to have a valid understanding of who we are and therefore of how we would react in various situations, we have to understand the reasons for our decisions and behavior. And even more fundamentally, we have to understand our feelings and their origins. Where do they come from? Let's start with something simple. The feeling of pain. The sensory and emotional feeling of pain arises from distinct neural signals and has a well-defined and obvious role in our lives. Pain encourages you to put down that red-hot frying pan, punishes you for pounding your thumb with that hammer, and reminds you that when sampling 6 brands of single malt scotch, you should not make them doubles. A friend may have to draw you out before you understand your feelings toward that financial analyst who took you to the wine bar last night, but a pounding headache is a feeling you'd think you could get in touch with without anyone's help. And yet it is not that simple, as evidenced by the famous placebo effect. When we think of the placebo effect, we may imagine an inert sugar pill that relieves a mild headache as well as a Tylenol, as long as we believe we've taken the real thing. But the effect can be dramatically more powerful than that. For example, angina pectoris, a chronic malady caused by inadequate blood supply in the muscle of that heart wall, often causes very severe pain. If you have angina and attempt to exercise, which can mean simply walking to answer the door, nerves in your heart muscle act like a check engine sensor. They carry signals via your spinal cord to your brain to alert you that improper demands are being placed on your circulatory system. The result can be excruciating pain, a warning light that is hard to ignore. In the 1950s, it was common practice for surgeons to tie off certain arteries in the chest cavity as a treatment for patients with severe angina pain. They believed new channels would sprout in nearby heart muscle, improving circulation. The surgery was performed on a large number of patients with apparent success. Yet something was amiss. Pathologists who later examined these patients' cavities never saw any of the expected new blood vessels. Okay, I gotta be honest with you. I probably wouldn't be able to actually tell you what I just read. Not because I have a bad memory, but just my understanding. Like, I think I probably only understood like 10% of what I just read. It's just there. I'm not in here. I'm not even like processing what I read. Like, even I read them out loud, but I'm not really understanding what I'm reading. Okay, but I'll just keep reading, I guess. Apparently, the surgery was a success at relieving the patient's symptoms, but a failure at addressing their cause. In 1958, curious cardiac surgeons conducted an experiment that, for ethical reasons, would not be permitted today. They carried out sham operations. For 5 patients, surgeons cut through the skin to expose the arteries in question, but then stitched each patient back together without actually tying off the arteries. They also performed the true operation on another group of 13 patients. The surgeons told neither the patients nor their cardiologist which subjects had had a real operation. Among the patients who did receive the real operation, 76% saw an improvement in their angina pain, but so did all 5 in the sham group. Both groups, believing that a relevant surgical procedure had been performed, reported far milder pain than they had had before surgery. Since the surgery produced no physical changes in either group, in terms of the growth of new blood vessels to improve circulation to the heart, both groups would have continued to experience the same level of sensory input to the pain centers of their brains. Yet both groups had a greatly reduced conscious experience of pain. It seems our knowledge of our feelings, even physical ones, is so tenuous that we can't even reliably know when we are experiencing excruciating pain. The view of emotion that is dominant today can be traced not to Freud, who believed that unconscious content was blocked from awareness by the mechanism of repression, but to William James, whose name has already come up in several other contexts. James was an enigmatic character, born in New York City in 1842, to an extremely wealthy man who used some of his vast fortune to finance extensive travel for himself and his family. James had attended at least 15 different schools in Europe and America by the time he was 18. In New York, Newport, Rhode Island, London, Paris, Boulogne-sur-Mer, in northern France, Geneva, and Bonn. His interest flitted similarly from subject to subject, landing for a while on art, chemistry, the military, the anatomy, and medicine. The flitting consumed 15 years. At one point during those years, he accepted an invitation from the famous Harvard biologist Louis Agassiz to go on an expedition to the Amazon River basin in Brazil, during which James was seasick most of the time and, in addition, contracted smallpox. In the end, medicine was the only course of study James completed, receiving an MD from Harvard in 1869 at the age of 27, but he never practiced or taught medicine. It was an 1867 visit to Mineral Springs in Germany where he traveled to recuperate from the health problems resulting from the Amazon trip that led James to psychology. Like Munsterberg, 16 years later, James attended some of Wilhelm Wundt's lectures and got hooked on the subject, in particular the challenge of turning psychology into a science. He began to read works of German psychology and philosophy, but he returned to Harvard to complete his medical degree. After his graduation from Harvard, he became deeply depressed. His diary from that time reveals little but misery and self-loathing. His suffering was so severe that he had himself committed to an asylum in Somerville, Massachusetts, for treatment. However, he credited his recovery not to the treatment he received but to his discovery of an essay on free will by the French philosopher Charles Renouvier. After reading it, he resolved to use his own free will to break his depression. In truth, it doesn't seem to have been that simple. For he remained incapacitated. Incapacitated for another 18 months and suffered from chronic depression for the rest of his life. Still, by 1872, James was well enough to accept a teaching post in physiology at Harvard, and by 1875, he was teaching the relations between physiology and psychology, making Harvard the first university in the United States to offer instruction in experimental psychology. It was another decade before James put forth to the public his theory of emotions, providing the outline of that theory in an article he published in 1884, What is an Emotion? The article appeared in a philosophy journal called Mind, rather than in a psychology journal, because the first English language journal of research psychology wouldn't be established until 1887. Wow, amazing. I thought this was something I wouldn't be interested, but after I read about, William James, and I realized this was definitely something I really, cared. I wanted to pursue psychology as well. This was an inspiring story. Back then, psychology wasn't really, a well-developed field yet as a subject. Yeah. Fascinating. Okay, anyway, I think I gotta go. My friend is texting me. We are meeting at the gym at 3 p.m. Okay. All right. Later.